now that's almost level. I barely have to drop it at all to get my bevel on the wood. And then I can roll this in the rest of the way with this tool. So I work my way down a bowl. They call it a hero cut. I don't do hero cuts because I'm not a hero, and if I try to do a hero cut, I can't follow my shape. So I'm one of those guys that has to work a little at a time, especially if I'm going to turn a thin bowl. This is a rough out. Rough out's not as important. You just want to be roughly in the range. But if I'm doing a finished bowl, I'm going to start here. I'm going to work down about an inch. I'm going to make sure I got my shape. I'm going to make sure I got my thickness. Then I'm going to clear a little more out of the bottom, and I'm going to go to the next inch, and that's how I work my way down the bowl. So that being said, our goal is to get this thing down. There's a hole that I put in here, which Tommy's been trying to get me to do for a long time, to tell you the depth you're going to go to, and I never do it, and I keep going through the bottom of a bowl, so I think I'm going to listen to him finally. And that's as far as I want to get tonight because it's a rough out. So that's a 1 inch. That's going to give me a 1 inch depth. And the nice part about using a big drill, that was a 1/2 inch bit. I have here. The nice part about using a 1/2 inch bit is that your scissor, your figure 8 will fit into it, and that way you can actually see what your finished bottom is going to be. Right now I'm about an inch and tiny bit over an inch at the most.
We have a request for some better illumination.
Yeah, that's the trouble with this is it comes off when you try to
here?
get it too far. Let's see how far we can drag it. How's that? Is that better? Okay. Woohoo, thank you. Okay, so if I'm going to work the side, there's absolutely no reason for me to have this thing too far toward the bottom because I'm not going to get down there and do that bottom yet. So I want this over here where I can have the shortest distance between me and the workpiece. Can it be I forgot how to turn this on? Oh yeah, that'll do it. Okay, so I like to turn these kind of fast, even though I probably shouldn't make it too fast in here. Okay, it's about as fast as the rest of it. Okay, so
You wear your face shield? Face shield? How about face shield?
I'm sorry?
You wear your face shield?
Oh, thank you. I always wear my face shield.
Good.
I always wear it. Helps the dust fall down this way. Thank you for that. I turn my bevel, aim my bevel, like everybody does. I aim the bevel at the direction I want to cut so that I don't skate, and I get that first 1/8 of an inch or something to write against. Once I'm that far, I can roll the tool almost straight up if I want to, as long as I keep the bevel in contact, which is what I'm going to do. And I'm watching over here. I'm not watching over there. That means nothing to me if I can't see that well. Do we have any volunteers for cleanup? Ethan, remember when I told you that was a bad seat?
Hey, not bad.
Okay, now I'm bringing that down in steps.
Hey, but you're using two terms. You talk about having the bevel at 1 o'clock. You're talking about the
Flute.
aren't you?
The flute at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
You know, the opening in the
Yes.
tool.
All right.
No, the bevel stays wherever it has to be to stay in contact with the wood. That's the way I want to cut. I always want to be in contact with the wood if I can be. Okay, so now this is not a problem area, what we did so far. You know, there's no catches in that area. Catches start happening as we get deeper. I'm going to intentionally, I'll cut it a little thinner. I don't want this too damn thin because I don't want it to crack on me, but when it dries, because it's a nice piece of wood. But I'll make that. No, I'm going to leave it this way, and I'm going to get in here, and this is the trouble area in here. That's where people have troubles with it. Now, when I get into that trouble area, now see how high the tool is? How low the handle is? And as I go in there, I roll it. And it rolls a little to the right, keeps the bevel in contact. And the other thing about a calabash is you gotta be able to work over here. I used to have my one just like this, I had it against the wall. It was a terrible way to try to work because you couldn't get on this side of the tool. So now the different lathe that I have, I turned it around the other way and I have lots of room. Okay, so we're gonna go back there. So what you're hearing there, that's where, and you guys all turn bolts, I don't have to tell you this, but what you're hearing, that's where the end grain is starting to come across. And that's where you can start tearing. So at that point, you got a couple of choices. One of them is to speed up the machine and take a lighter cut, which is what I'd like to do. The other one would be to change tools and go to something that's going to be, you know, your bevel's going to be a little better. I'm going to take this, I'm going to continue till I'm about, can you see that? About there. With this, using this tool. And I'm lightening my cut now. And that's the sound I want.
Say what you said again. You start to hear something, that lets you know when you're gonna get tear out?
Didn't you hear it?
Yes, I heard it.
That's, you hear tear out when it's going to happen? Yeah, that's what that is. What's happening is the grain has changed. With this, you're cutting end grain. You're cutting into the end grain, like this. The fibers are this way when they're, you know, when the bowl is here. And that's the danger part. Nobody has trouble here and here. Everybody has trouble here and here. And particularly, you don't have trouble here because you're following the grain on that cut. The grain's moving, the bowl's moving this way, the fingers of the grain are this way, so as you're cutting, the grain is moving away from you. But on this side where you're coming into the grain, now here's my grain, my fingers are the grain. And when you're cutting that, you're cutting directly into that end grain. Now as you get down here closer to the bottom, that end grain is, here you're sort of going across it. Down here, now you're going to go right into it half of the time. Half of the time you're going to be going with the grain. The problem is that time that you're going into the end grain, and especially here into the end grain. And that's where most tear out occurs. And I think if you look at that, you're not going to see, I don't know, you see any tear out in there, Tommy? Looks pretty clean. You did a good job. You taught me good. By the way, I take these corners off right away, and this is something that I was talking about with Rick the other day. If you go to David Ellsworth, here's how he shows you to take your corners off, and it works. He puts the point of the tool directly into the corner, into the sharp point, and very lightly, and that's the whole trick. Touches it. If you push too hard, you're going to have a tremendous catch. And this tool is level. I mean, you're literally finessing the shavings off of it. But now there's no more corner. So if you bump your hand into it, and Rick will tell you a story about bumping your hand into the corner. He ended up in the emergency room with it.
Thanks,
Well, I think it's an important thing for people to know that it can happen. He ended up with a hell of a splinter underneath his skin that he couldn't even see it was in so deep.
Sharp edge will slice you.
But, now you said to prevent that tear out, you're gonna take a finer cut, or you switch tool. What tool are you gonna go to?
I'm
A
going to
smaller?
change right now, but for now, to get this far, I'm going to take a finer cut, and I'm going to make sure the bevel stays on the wood. Now, if I get this tool here, this is level. There's no way at this point that I can make that bevel be on the wood. That's going to do two things. One, I can't control the line that I'm cutting on. I'm going to start getting an irregular line. And the second thing is that I can get a catch. Now, if I turn it sideways like this, I'm not going to get much of a catch, but I'm also not going to cut very well. You know, it cuts very slowly that way, and I'm going to end up with a real ununiform finish. So if I can keep it here and let the bevel ride, then the bevel is riding where I just cut. And if you can feel it, then you'll keep that same depth of cut, unless you move your tool away, which is just practice. Did I answer that question? And you get that look that I didn't answer it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right, so now I'm gonna work on that, now I'm gonna work on that bottom a little bit. So now I'm able to take, this other tool, this New Zealand tool, and that's got very little angle to the bevel, or very much angle to the bevel. It's acute, straight up and, more straight up and down, 85 degrees or 80 degrees or 75 degrees, I don't know what it is. But that tool now, now I still can't take too much with it. And if you look right there, that's, 3/16 of an inch of wood. I don't want to go directly into,
Put it right here in front.
I don't want to go directly into this, because that's so much wood that I'm trying to take that I don't care what tool you're using, it's going to catch, or it's going to booger up the grain. So we're going to try to take a little less, and I'm also going to see if I can speed this thing up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to take a piece of this, and by the way, it's time to move the tool rest.
Now, could you be using your traditional bull gouge as opposed to that one used like that tool?
Okay, Rick, look, let's see if we can do it. That's good, that's a really good point. Correct. Yes. For a while yet. But I would have to run, I'd have to have it.
No, I meant your other bull gouge, your,
Oh, the Who's What cut.
what?
The
Yeah,
square,
that.
the
Just
Who's
what?
what do they call it?
From New Zealand. No wonder.
This, by the way, if you watch anything of Mahoney, this is what he does most of his work with. He doesn't use a lot of swept back. The swept back gouge makes the gouge versatile because you can turn it on edge and you can shear cut with it. You can on the outside of the bowl, you can do a couple of different things. Does that thing see me? I'm going to come over here with it. Where's it going to see me?
Where you go? You go where you want to go.
Okay, I'm going to go on the outside of the bowl on this side.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
Almost anyway.
Doesn't matter. No good? This is what the swept back gouge does for you, the swept back grind. With the swept back grind, can you see it? Okay, I can do a couple of things. I can lay the bevel here, drop the handle at 45 degrees, and I can take a very thin shear cut across here. That's not a shear scrape, that's a shear cut. Bill Grumbine calls that his tangential cut, where you're on the tangent. It's a little more risky cut because you can catch if you're not careful, but as long as the handle's down, it's not going to happen. If you raise that handle a little bit, I can guarantee a nasty catch. This position is what David teaches as his roughing cut. But when he's teaching it, if you look at his video, he's using wet poplar. It's like turning a banana. You can cut it easy. But what's really great about this with the long straight line here is that you can put this tool, drop the handle, put this tool here with the face almost closed. The flute is almost aimed directly at the bowl. You're just keeping this flute about 1/16 of an inch off, and you can take little fine shavings that are like a wisp. And if you do it right, Ethan, come and catch a couple of these. Just put your hand out there. And then send them around. I mean, you could take shavings off that are so thin that that's almost a sanded edge. I mean, that when they talk about starting to sand with 120 grit and stuff like that, that's what they're talking about. Getting that surface that nice and smooth. that's a whole nother discussion for another day. What happened? It's beautiful, isn't it? Okay, so now, I'm going back over here again. Okay, so now I want to get to my bottom, so I'll first do a little bit with this one, and then, again, here's my bevel against the wood. I'm not even cutting at this point. And look where that tool is, so I've got to get it more straight into the wood. Now you hear the end grain? Now the nice part about this one is that I can pick up a cut from the other one pretty easily. I want to go a little further with this tool before I take the conventional grind. And you can feel back here when you're not on the bevel anymore, because you'll start feeling it jumping. Okay, that's as far as I want to go with that tool. That's a pretty nice smooth edge. And to finish it, I just love this bottoming tool. You know, with this bottoming grind. Now, once we get this on the bevel and we're cutting, we've got to kind of move in the direction and make our own shape. It can be a very aggressive cut when the tool is sharp. And this is no different for any shape bowl that you do. And at the bottom, I choose to leave that little dimple up rather than try to cut it away. You can cut it away. You can do it with your regular gouge, and you just cut right through it, and it'll be nice and smooth. But I find that if it's up a little bit, this is face grain. This sands away so easily. You know, one touch with a sander and that's gone. Whereas if you try to get it off and you go too deep and you make a dimple around it, now you got to sand everything around it away to get to it. So I prefer to leave that bump. So pretty much that's how. I'm sorry.
If it happens to tear out,
Tear out?
well, you can knock it off.
Tear out? What's... And incidentally, calabash bowls, I like to let the rim taper in. You know, you can make the rim taper any way you want. I'll show you how I go after those. I should have done it earlier than this, but it's okay. And I pretty much, you could make a cut from this edge. Again, you get the bevel on the wood. And the other thing you can do with it is shear scrape. And you can feel when it's smooth. Again, the tip of the tool, very lightly. Just taking away wisps.
Butch, you're just showing us all this fine detail as if this was the second turn.
This
You
whole
wouldn't
thing
do
that I
this
did
much-
gets much more difficult when you're second turn. It also gets much dirtier, which is
Yeah,
why I didn't
But you
bring.
wouldn't do this and then put this bowl away for 6 months. You wouldn't do all this fine work,
Oh, yeah, I would. I don't put anything away with a sharp edge on it.
okay?
Because, I don't know why, but I was taught that they promote a crack, leaving a sharp edge. So I take my, yep, two things I try to do. Well, one thing I sort of defer from. By the way, if you look up here, here's the little screw hole. I don't know if you can see it or not. Where can I bring that? See my drill mark right here? That's the drill mark that I put to get my depth. So I'm pretty much where I want to go now for this bowl.
When did you drill that? Did you drill that after you had cored it, or?
I did this one after I cored it. Yeah, because if I would have done it before I cored it, I would have had a hole going through my core. And it makes the core useless.
You're right, I'm sorry, that was a stupid question.
Well, no, it's not. You don't core, so it's not a foolish question. No, it's a good question. And Tommy recommends, and I hate to refer back to him, but he taught me so much of this stuff. He recommends that you don't put your drill hole right in the center. I still never figured out why. Why?
Because you're putting your bowl back on a lot of times with your tail. You do everything in grain, but a lot of times I'll put my bowl back in between centers to true up the.
Okay, so that way you've left the. That's true too. Okay, now see that I wouldn't have thought of that one
How
out.
would you put them between centers? I don't understand. Are we gonna learn this in the perfect bowl? or-
Oh no, you got to put it between centers to true up your
If you're using
tenon.
vacuum, which I hope they bring back that.
It was about this time last year, wasn't it?
We won't go there. But if you're using vacuum, you can use the point to center the bowl back on. You got to true up the inside before you reverse it, so you don't.
It doesn't matter what you're planning to do, you never want to lose those
Centers.
centers to the last possible second.
With that in mind, Tommy taught me that when I core, to take, after I'm done coring a bowl, and I usually clean a little bit the bottom, he doesn't do that, but you get a nub about that big across, or this big across sometimes, that the bowl breaks away. It doesn't cut all the way to it. And then, so that becomes your center. Now, because I'm a pain in the ass to myself, I like to clean that off and make the bottom look like this. But you don't have to. You could put your center dot in that. And then what Tommy taught me to do with that is take my tail stock with the live center in it. And even if you have to, put that little pin in your live center, because that'll cause it to burn. And then you'll be able to see it, whereas just the point will close up again on you. And so I burn that little point in. Now when it comes time to taking it back, if I want to put this is going to go like this. It's going to keep its length. Some people say it's going to grow in length. It's bullshit. It doesn't grow. But it's going to lose a lot in the width because the tree shrinks radially. So the tree grew just like this. And so this is the outside of the tree. This is the inside of the tree. And what's going to happen here is it's going to go like this. And when it goes like that, this is going to stay the same height. And I would say walnut's a pretty stable wood, but it's probably going to change a 1/4 inch.
At least.
Yeah, right? Depending on the size of the bowl, the bigger the bowl, the more it's going to change. So now what happens is if you want to stick and turn this, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to true up that tenon. And truing up that tenon can be dangerous, as we demonstrated last year. So because if you put it on, say, a vacuum chuck, and you're only using the vacuum chuck to hold the bowl and tension it so it spins, you're not using it with a vacuum. You're putting the tailstock against it. So now what happens is all of the pressure is here and here, because the vacuum chuck won't even touch it here and here, because the vacuum chuck's aluminum, it's round. And now you go on the outside of that and you start putting your tailstock against it, and you're forcing that bowl to do this. And if you force it hard enough and you make your bowl thin enough before you take it off the lathe, you can break it. Tommy and I broke one last year that exact way.
You can also just put a piece of carpet underlayment over your chuck.
Yeah.
Turn it around, put it against the chuck, and come it up, and that'll be supported right around where you're pushing with the tailstock.
Yep, which is what I do most of the time. Carpet, or I have a piece of plumber's gasket material, the thick gasket material I throw against it. And then, then you get it chewed up. But by the same token, it's nice to be able to have your centers. Tommy, what he does with his, and it's a very good way, is the ball's never gonna break if you put your big chuck, your vacuum chuck, we'll say, large circumference vacuum chuck, on this side, because it's like pushing on an egg. It's not gonna, it's strong that way. So what happens is, you can take your tailstock, you can put your tailstock in the hole that you left in here, in the point that you left, and you know you got your middle. You can you put a big vacuum chuck on, and push it back against the vacuum chuck, and then with the tailstock in place, just get in here with a gouge and scrape with it if you have to. I gotta clarify that. Scrape with it does not mean turn it with the flute aiming against the bowl, because you get a hell of a catch if you do that. You don't scrape inside of a bowl with a gouge. I don't anyway. But you might not get bevel contact because your tailstock is here. So maybe you've got to use maybe you're going to grind one a little steeper. The one thing about tools is I always keep a couple that I don't mind changing the grind on for a particular use. And you would just go in here and just so you can cut out enough to true the area that the chuck is going to touch, the vacuum chuck. How am I doing?
Yeah, except call it a drum chuck.
Drum chuck,
When you call it
okay, yeah,
vacuum chuck, you
thank you.
Vacuum and.
You're exactly right. A drum chuck, a big spindle, a big hollow thing. So you turn it around. Now you're perfectly against it because it's a true surface, and you can push as hard as you want. You can't push as hard as you want. But you can push hard, and you don't have to worry about that. Meanwhile, you've had this point in place, which is how we got to this conversation, to have a center when you're going to go put this in place, and when you turn it around, if you're lucky, you still have your center on the other side to recenter it that way. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Questions?
Now that's gonna move,
Oh, yeah.
but you're not gonna put a point in there. So how are you gonna remount that?
I don't have a tailstock here. Oh, yeah, I can put it back on and put a point in it. Yep. Yep. So here, listen, in other words, we should do it. You're right.
Just make a pencil.
So are you doing that with the calabash?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do that with any bowl that I'm going to second turn. I put the tailstock back on, and so let's do that. Hey, we didn't do too bad with keep confining this mess. Okay, let's get it in the groove. That's in the groove now. Really went in the hell way easier than it came out, didn't it? Nice job. Okay, so this we don't want. Does anybody know where that little schmutzy tool is that takes out?
The bar's normally over there. Are you taking the life center out?
Well, let's keep the cup too, though, because what happens is with the end grain, when it's wet now,
Yeah.
it just comes back up into the computer. So if you can almost burn the cup into there.
There's a little
When you put it in the center.
pin that you drop in that locks
Not this one.
the tool. Yes, yeah, it goes right in here, and then this will spin right off. But I'm afraid unless somebody has something small that we can stick in there.
You might look down below, maybe in the box underneath.
Oh, the box underneath, okay.
We have there's a whole lot of things over here with handles on them that'll work for that.
Okay, good.
See if it'll fit, and maybe get something smaller here.
Will it go through?
Yes, it will. So now basically, and I'm going to leave this on just to show Tom who I can't, because that won't fit in there. Yeah, no, I guess. Now I'm going to leave that oh, this thing doesn't have a point. But that's okay. This will do the same thing. Thank you. Except that's not good.
Did you fit?
Now,
You want one?
yeah. That probably fits in that. Yeah, so that's okay. Okay, so what I've done here is I've locked it. This is a different thickness than this. And this tool locks up beautifully, the tailstock locks up beautifully over here and over here. You can go all the way through with it, it's still not locked. Well, you know what?
Reach under and tighten it.
No, this bushing is out of here.
Yes, it is.
See the bushing? We gotta tell this thing needs some work. There's probably a set screw under there that holds that bushing. Now it's okay. All right, so all I'm gonna do is, if we don't have a point in this, and it would be nice to have one, is just advance the tailstock, which won't rotate now, because I have the holding pin in it. And I've cauterized the center into that, which will be, this one will be difficult because it should have a hole from the pin, but you all have your little pin in your tailstock. And now when I want to put this back onto a chuck someplace, on a, what kind of chuck am I putting it on?
I call them drum chuck.
A drum chuck. Then if I want to put this back on a drum chuck, then all we do is we have a chuck over here, this is going to fit against, we slide the little point into the point again, and we're centered. And then we can go about hollowing or truing an area in here, then we can spin it around with a trued area, go back into our original center, and we have everything we need to center the bolt. Now questions?
Why didn't you just
Oh no, this is going to be hard.
stick it against Chuck, turn it around
Mhm.
like this,
Mhm.
true up your tenon, then take it, turn it back around, put it back in the chuck, then do the inside?
Well, you can do that.
Well, then you don't have to have that
Well,
little mark you just...
you're not-
If you're coring bowls and you have a lot of cores, they don't have a tenon on it. So if you're gonna cut a tenon into it and then turn it around, you lose a lot of
Well,
weight.
now let's just talk about this bowl that
This is
6
the
months
last bowl.
later...
This is the money bowl. This is the last bowl. in the
Why, I
core.
still don't understand why you wanted that little point on the inside.
Okay, when you're coring,
We're not talking about a vacuum chuck,
when
right?
if you're,
'Cause I don't
when
have
you're
a vacuum.
coring, okay, the piece that came out of here when I cored it did not have a tenon on it.
Right.
So how are you gonna get that started when you go to turn it?
Well, Mahoney in his DVD says you turn that around and stick it back inside
Stick it back
the
inside.
big bowl
what?
that's
And the
still
one
on
you
your
just corded out
chuck.
of, and make it turn a tenon on your.
Then you turn a tenon
That
on
would be
it.
if you're using tenon, that's.
Yeah,
the
but
way
then
to do
you're,
it.
see, you're putting a tenon on it.
But I'm asking the question, why are you putting a point in this bowl that you're getting ready to stick
For
in?
demonstration purposes to show you that. But I would do this anyway, because when I true
Oh, I missed
this,
that part, okay.
when I true this, I don't true it, I put it against the drum chuck. I put it against the drum chuck, especially big bowls. Little bowls I don't bother, but a big bowl, I put it against the drum chuck for the backside, and I true an area here so that I can turn it around on that drum chuck, and it's perfectly true.
Well, this drum chuck, I don't understand that either. I don't know if I have a drum chuck.
You don't.
Well, you make one easily.
You can make it though.
I don't know when you use it.
So you can do it in 6 months. You can pad your chuck by 4
I'm out here.
There's other ways
That's what I
around
do.
it.
If you're not coring,
That's the same
or
thing
if
as
you're
a jam
stopping,
chuck.
What you're calling it, what do you call it, drum chuck?
Yeah, we just,
The same purpose as a jam, I mean, we're talking
Yes,
the
that's-
same
yeah,
thing.
it's
they
a
use
jam
it,
chuck.
oh yeah, it works as a jam chuck in this circumstance.
Okay.
But if you were coring
Okay.
all the time, right, and you've got a big bowl and you're gonna core 3 bowls out of the middle of it. If you wanna put a tenon on each one of those bowls as you take it out, you've gotta take your coring rig apart to be able to get your tailstock on. And to get, you gotta move the coring rig sits here,
Yeah.
this thing is tight up against here when you're doing it.
Okay.
So now, and your coring rig is here, so you can't get your banjo and your tool rest in a position to work that. So you just take them out to their cones. You take them out as cones. Now when it comes time